welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and one more time, and hopefully for the last time, I will be talking about some great Commander cards that came out last year. We got so many fantastic Commander cards last year, more than we ever have before by quite a wide margin. I've already done lots of lists on the best cards from each set. Cards I missed from last year, I did at the end of the year last year, but I'm still coming across cards that came out last year that I have missed, totally got overlooked by me, that I think are fantastic in the Commander format. And in particular, I will give a shout out to Warhammer 40k that came out last fall and got overshadowed probably worse than anything because it was just sandwiched in between a whole bunch of stuff. We had Dominaria United come out and then Warhammer 40k and then Infinity was in there and then we immediately started getting Brothers War. So a lot of this stuff got overshadowed and this really is a fantastic Commander set. In fact, it is a Commander set, right? It's Warhammer 40k Commander, so it technically is a Commander set. So pretty much every card in this set is engineered for the Commander format. So unsurprisingly, you are going to see a lot of Warhammer 40k cards on this list, and we're going to start out with one, in fact, Bertha V Imperium, 2 white, blue, and a black saga. Chapter 1, create a 2/2 white Astartes warrior creature token with vigilance for each opponent you have. Chapter 2, each opponent sacrifices a creature. Chapter 3, draw 2 cards for each opponent who controls fewer creatures than you. I just mentioned this card in my Esper Staples video because I think it is a card that could go in any Esper deck and it's going to do work for you no matter what you're doing in the deck. Maybe I'm playing a control theme. This is a card that comes down and just makes me a bunch of token creatures that I can maybe block with if people are coming at me. Having your opponent sacrificing creatures, of course, is always good, and you have the possibility here for drawing 6 cards if you have 3 opponents, right? You're going to draw 2 cards for each opponent who controls fewer creatures than you. Remember, you just made a bunch of tokens, so maybe you're not going to get 6 cards off of this every time. I think even if you just get 2 cards off of this, it is worth playing. Really great card that I think can go in almost any deck that has these colors. Next up, Fade from History, and this is a card that I overlooked for a different sort of reason. So 2 green sorcery. Each player controls an artifact or enchantment, creates a 2/2 green bear creature token, then destroy all artifacts and enchantments. This is kind of this weird thing when you evaluate cards and why you kind of sometimes overlook them. This can be like a Commander fallacy, I guess, when evaluating cards, as you look at that first part and you go, okay, well, do I want to play this in bear tribal, or maybe my opponents, I don't want them having tokens, all of that kind of good stuff. Ignore that first part. Just completely ignore the first part about making bear tokens. This is 4 mana, destroy all artifacts and enchantments. That's actually a very unique card in the entire game of Magic, right? So just that alone makes this a very significant card in the format. 4 mana to wipe all the artifacts and enchantments off the board is fantastic. This card definitely should have got a mention from me because for sure it is going to be a card that is significant in the Commander format going forward. Next up, Grell Philosopher, 2 and a blue, horror wizard 1/4. When Grell Philosopher enters the battlefield and at the beginning of your upkeep, each horror you control gains all activated abilities of target artifact and opponent controls until end of turn. You may spend blue mana as though it were mana of any color to activate those abilities. So once again, we're in the situation of maybe overlooking a card because of the wording it has, right? People are going to look at this card like I did and go, oh, well, you want to play this in a horror tribal deck because each horror you control gains those activated abilities. No, you can play this card in any deck because this is a horror. This comes down and you can immediately copy one of your opponent's artifacts that might have activated abilities. Okay, sure. But on your very next upkeep, you can then turn this into your opponent's Soul Ring if you want to, right? That's a artifact that likely one of your opponents is going to control that has an activated ability. So now my Grell Philosopher just becomes a really good mana dork. Maybe if I need specific colors of mana, I can now turn it into a Arcane Signet or something like that, right? So I think worst case scenario for this card, I don't have any other horrors in my deck at all. This is just a 1/4 creature that I can copy my opponent's mana rocks with every single turn. So it just becomes a blue mana rock that also doubles as a creature. And then at some point, if one of my opponents plays a really powerful artifact with a really cool ability, I can start copying that as well, right? every single upkeep I get to switch it up. So for me, I'm thinking worst case scenario is I just turn this guy into a Soul Ring every turn. Next up at number 7, Mandate of Abaddon. 3 and a black sorcery. Choose target creature you control. Destroy all creatures with power less than that creature's power. Again, a very significant card in the format that I think deserves a mention. Fell the Mighty is a very popular card in the format and does exactly the opposite of this, right? Where you want to choose a creature with a really low power and then destroy all those bigger creatures. Here, we're doing the opposite. It's only 4 mana. You're going to choose target creature you control, which could very easily be your commander. Destroy all creatures with lesser power than that. That can be really good, right? In fact, it can even be a one-sided board wipe sometimes if you happen to have a commander with a really big power. If I'm playing even just a mono black deck and my commander has a really big power, this could very easily be a Dune Blast because my commander has the biggest power on the battlefield. I think this is a pretty good mono black board wipe in the format. Next up at number 6, Mocking Doppelganger. 3 and a blue shapeshifter 0/0 with flash. You may have Mocking Doppelganger. Enter the battlefield as a copy of a creature an opponent controls, except it has other creatures with the same name as this creature are goated. This is a fantastic clone effect, I think. First of all, it's got flash. That makes every card better. Now, of course, the drawback here being you can't copy your own creatures, but I don't see that as a big drawback. I guess if you're in a deck where you want to be copying your own creatures a lot, you wouldn't play this card, but in almost any other deck, this is going to be great. Another card that I like a lot that a lot of people have sort of forgotten about is Sly Instigator. I might have to give that card another mention on my channel at some point. I love that card. I have it in a deck of mine, and all you need to do is just take the biggest, most annoying creature on the battlefield at any given time and just keep goading it over and over again, and it is no longer a problem for you. Mocking Doppelganger is the same way, except maybe better, because now my opponent has a Blightsteel Colossus, and yes, I know I'm going to the extreme example here, but I copy my opponent's Blightsteel Colossus. Now I have a Blightsteel Colossus, and their Blightsteel Colossus is goated. So I'm going to close out the game pretty quick in that scenario. Even in a scenario where my opponent just has a big 6/6 trampling creature or something like that, copy that. I now have a big creature and theirs is goated so it can't attack me. I think this is a fantastic clone effect in the format. Coming in at number 5, another fantastic black board wipe I think that I totally overlooked. Blight Grenade, 4 and a black sorcery. Destroy target creature. All creatures get -3/-3 until end of turn. I guess a lot of people might not consider this necessarily a board wipe, but I think it's a fantastic one. I gushed over Hostile Takeover that also came out last year because I really like that you could choose a creature that you want to get rid of and make it a 1/1, and then choose a creature you want to save to make it a 4/4, and then it's dealing 3 damage and basically killing everything else. Blight Grenade essentially works the exact same way so long as you have creatures that are toughness 3 or greater, right? I think this is a phenomenal board wipe in any deck that's black, of course, where you have a commander with a bigger than 3 toughness, because of course, this isn't going to hurt your commander. And a lot of times, again, this can turn into a Dune Blast very, very easily, where my opponents have a bunch of small creatures in play, so of course the -3/-3 is going to wipe them out, but I have one opponent who happens to have a big creature, so that's the creature I'm going to destroy, right? I pick the one creature that will survive the -3/-3, kill it, give everything else the -3/-3 to get rid of them, and then my commander has a 4 or 5 toughness, and it sticks around, so it essentially becomes a one-sided board wipe almost. I mean, it is no Toxic Deluge, of course, but in a lot of situations, it can be even better because you can get to keep your stuff around, and I love board wipes that can give the advantage to you, right? It's not everyone's on an even footing here. I'm giving an advantage to myself by putting this in my deck. Give it consideration for your deck, I think, if your commander maybe has a bigger than 3 toughness. Coming in at number 4, Ascend from Avernus. X white sorcery. Return all creature and planeswalker cards with mana value X from your graveyard to the battlefield. Exile Ascend from Avernus. People might be surprised that I'm mentioning this card because a lot of people are probably already playing it. This is definitely one that I overlooked and probably shouldn't have. We got a lot of cards in Baldur's Gate that there was worth talking about. So again, this is just another card that got buried along with a lot of other cards on this list. It's a fantastic recursion effect. I found out this the hard way playing against one of my Patreons on my Discord where they just reanimated their entire graveyard and they were playing a mono white deck. It was pretty much game over from there because I had just cast a board wipe to put everyone on even footing, and then on their turn they cast this and got their entire army back and then some. some. The 3 white and the X can be a little scary for you. I guess in a mono white deck, it's extra good where you don't have to worry about the white mana. Even in a 2-color deck, I think it's pretty good. Sure, you're probably not going to be getting any 7 or 8 drops back with this, but a lot of themes, especially in white, are playing those low mana value creatures like Soldier Tribal, Knight Tribal, stuff like that. So it is very likely that for 5 or 6 mana, you can get your entire team back out of your graveyard and put it on the battlefield. And a swing like that in a commander game can of course be completely game ending. Might want to take a look and see if this fits in any of your decks. Coming in at number 3, Gyxian Puppeteer, 3 and a black, Phyrexian Warlock, 4/3. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. When Gyxian Puppeteer dies, return another target creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So another card that I missed that I think is pretty fantastic. I have already shoehorned it into a couple of decks. It fits in a lot of different strategies. And again, this is one of those cards where you look at it and you go, okay, well, I'm not in a draw theme in a black deck, so I'm not going to be getting that draw your second card each turn trigger all the time. So why would I put this in there? That to me is gravy, right? It's added bonus. You will be drawing cards in your deck, guaranteed. If you're not putting card draw in your commander deck, you're probably missing out on a very important part of building a commander deck. You're going to be getting that trigger from time to time, okay? If you're not building around this at all, you are certainly going to be getting that draw your second card trigger a couple of times during the course of the game, no question. But why I really like this card and why I actually think it fits in a lot more decks than people might think so is because of that last ability, right? When it dies, you return another target creature with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. I think if you have a commander with a mana value 3 or less that is black, it is very easy to slot this into your deck just as protection for your commander, right? You think about it this way, someone casts a board wipe, I have my commander in play, I have my Gyxian Puppeteer in play, they both go to the graveyard at the same time, I get the dice trigger, and then immediately return my commander back to the battlefield. That to me alone seems like it's kind of worth it to put this in your deck. And then again, that draw trigger thing is kind of just added bonus. I think a lot of black decks could easily take advantage of that as well. I got a Phyrexian Arena in my deck. I'm definitely going to be drawing 2 cards on every turn, right? Also be getting some of that life back as well. Nice added bonus. This card is a fantastic one. I think that could probably fit in a lot of decks, especially if your commander is fitting in that 3 mana value theme there. Next up at number 2, Golden Argosy, 4 mana, legendary artifact vehicle, 3/6. When Golden Argosy attacks, exile each creature that crewed it this turn. Return them to the battlefield tapped under their owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. Another card that I missed, another card that I overlooked, right? None of the cards on this list that I mentioned in my top list, and pretty much all of them I haven't really mentioned on my channel at all. This card definitely deserves a mention. And the reason why is because it is essentially another Conjurer's Closet, okay? Now it's not exactly, but it is almost another Conjurer's Closet. And of course, Conjurer's Closet is an incredibly popular card in the format for a whole lot of reasons. Any commander that has an ETB, you likely want to put a Conjurer's Closet in there so you can be getting that ETB trigger again and again every turn. Golden Argosy can be the same way. Now, of course, it's not quite as good. You do have to crew the Golden Argosy with your commander. You do have to attack with it. It's a 3/6 though, so you should be pretty good with the attacking. You don't really have to worry about losing it there. The crew is just 1, so obviously unless your commander has a power of 0, that's not going to be an issue. You don't get it back to the end step, but that can be a good thing because now I can board wipe on my second main phase and my commander comes back after the fact. So that can actually be a little bit of an added bonus there. Sometimes Conjurer's Closet can not work so well because the blinking on your end step doesn't work with what your commander's doing. But ultimately at the end of the day, this is just another colorless option to be blinking your creatures, and a lot of decks want to be doing that. And there's a lot of decks, like especially in red, black, and green, that don't really blink very well, right? White and blue are sort of the blinking colors. So if you want to be doing a lot of blinking, exiling, ETB triggers, all that kind of stuff, and you don't have a lot of options, this is a fantastic one for you, even if you just want to be blinking your commander every turn. Coming in at number 1 though is Primaris Eliminator, 4 and a black, Astartes Warrior, 3/2. When Primaris Eliminator enters the battlefield, choose 1. Destroy target creature, or creatures target player controls get -2/-2 until end of turn. I am embarrassed that I missed this card, not only because I think it's a fantastic commander card, but it is just hitting on all the things that I love about Magic cards in general. It is an ability stapled on a creature, which I always talk about is great for a number of reasons. Again, getting back to the blinking thing, another great creature to be blinking because it has that ETB ability. Recur out of the graveyard, which is more likely in a black theme. I can use that ability again, right? And of course, it is modal, and I love modal cards in the commander format because you never know what situation you're going to fall into. So we have a creature that has a modal ETB V ability on it. That is just firing on all cylinders as far as I'm concerned. I can't believe I missed this card. I actually came across it in a Deck Doctor video, but one of my patrons had it in their deck, and I was like, how did I miss this? But of course, we know how I missed it because I'm not perfect, and we had a lot of cards that came out last year, so of course, I did miss a few, particularly with Warhammer 40k, right? I encourage you guys to go back and look at that set. There's so many great Commander cards from it. Again, because it is essentially a Commander set, right? I love the choice of these abilities here. Obviously, just my creature enters the battlefield, I get to destroy another creature. That is something you're always going to want to use. There's never going to be a situation where that's not handy, but then the added bonus is maybe there's a situation where one of my opponents is playing a Goblin tribal deck or a Elf tribal deck or a Zombie tribal deck or one of those token tribes, right? Like Sapperling tribal, where you have a lot of little creatures lying around. Now I can completely just blow out that one player, right? This is creatures target player controls gets -2/-2 until end of turn. So I'm always going to want to destroy target creature, but maybe I'm going to fall into the situation. And in fact, I would say it's likely you're going to fall into the situation where I have one player that has this giant go wide strategy, maybe soldiers, knights, there's so many tribes that are fitting the toughness 2 or less sort of scenario. And I can just completely blow that player out on one card. And again, stapled on a creature. So there's a chance I get to use it again. I love this card. I think it's fantastic. I will be putting it in probably a couple of my decks because I absolutely love creatures like this in a Commander game. That is it. That is all. Just 10 more cards from last year. Still, I'm talking about this stuff. I thought I would get out one more video before we start getting more new cards here. All of these are really fantastic, interesting cards in the Commander format that some of them fit very specific situations. Some of them, though, are just generally good cards all around that you could put in just about any deck. If you are thinking of purchasing any of these cards, I do have a TCG Player link. It is in the description below. Feel free to give it a click. It helps support the channel. But that is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.